Inside this War Games edition of Bills, Randall, Slifer, and I share beaming optimism about the Bills' potential to send Mike McDaniel packing before the Dolphins head overseas for unas vacaciones a España. Randall and I see eye to eye as the Bills. Let's stack wins on wins by beating the Finns as the Bills. Randall, today isn't going to be the day, but someday will be the day that we have our Buffalo Bills fashion show, and we show off all of our cool, unique threads. We can both stuff our
little Josh on yeah.
Oh, yours is more unique than mine. I got the sort of standard AFC Champions one. But today what we're doing, as you well know, and I'll clue in my listener, is a war game. That is, you and I, and mostly you, to be honest, get to play defensive coordinator and offensive coordinator against the Miami Dolphins. So as we are discussing in pre-production, do we want to talk about the Dolphins in week 3, which is, what is that, a Sunday night game, right? Or a classic 1 o'clock AFC East matchup in Miami in November? And you had some nice and interesting points to make about whether or not it might be more fun to put on those offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator hats early in the season against Mike McDaniel or later in the season.
Yeah, it's almost like equally interesting to figure out, especially with how the Dolphins are going to end up, because I personally don't know what their record would be in week 10. I think it's going to be under 500, while week 3, they're still trying to figure it out, to be honest with you. But it's interesting because in week 3, it's almost, in my head, a strategic, maybe first 2 drives game plan set out, and then kind of adjusting and figure out Mike McDaniels. All of Buffalo likes, Photoshop pictures of Josh Allen holding a dolphin, feeding the dolphin and stuff like that, like Josh Allen, overtakes the Dolphins, which record-wise is accurate. But also we need to also throw in Sean McDermott in that as well, because he has that similar record with Mike McDaniels. Obviously, it's not a quarterback. Wins are not a quarterback stat. But McDermott has done a great job at developing a defensive game plan for the Miami Dolphins in their quick, timely passing offense. And McDermott has adjusted and figured that out. So his experience is just as good as Josh Allen's experience in adjusting. He knows Mike McDaniels, how he operates. So he can adjust better in a chess match than I believe Mike McDaniels can, because Sean McDermott knows, he has a tree diagram almost laid out in his head, in my opinion, for the Miami Dolphins. So week 3 could be interesting to see how McDermott evaluates their roster and how he adjusts in that nature. And then if you jump to week 10, now you're getting into players like Ogunjobi available, Michael Hoyt available, and seeing where Maxwell Hairston's at. Is he good enough to run toe-to-toe with Tyreek Hill on a vertical route, or is he good to run a crosser? So that comes into play in an interesting fashion to maybe, while we run disguise coverages against the Dolphins, maybe we play more man because we have a 4-2-9 guy. So that's what's super interesting.
And that sounds more interesting to me. So there, decision made. Let's do the week 10 game. It's a 1 o'clock game, which you and I both prefer over whether it's a Monday night game, the ridiculous Thursday night doubleheader on Amazon. I've ranted about this enough in the past 24 hours, and my listener will get to hear that rant coming up. And someday you, Alex Cullen, and I may rant about that very thing together, which is schedule expansion. But that's for another day on this edition of the Bills pod. We're doing a war game, and we're going to match up against the Miami Dolphins. It's week 10. Right, so it's our 9th game of the season because we got that early-ish bye.
Mm-hmm.
And not only, as you say, are we now going to be starting, at least, to get a feel for how good Maxwell Hairston is, getting a feel for how many snaps TJ Sanders is ready to undertake, getting a feel for whether or not Landon Jackson is prepared to take snaps in relief of Joey Bosa, who we want to keep clean and healthy for a playoff push. But also, This is an interesting game because it seems that you and I agree that Mike McDaniel just might be on the hot seat. So really playing for his job here by week 10.
100% agree. The rotation is probably the most interesting thing when it comes down to it, because that's probably when we'll start settling into what our defensive line is going to hold for the rest of the season, with the 6-game suspensions, bye week at 7, which is advantage us, to be honest with you. You get an extra week of practice to be able to get Ogunjobi and Hoy up to speed, strength, everything along those lines. And then by the Dolphins game is when we'll start creeping into, okay, this is how we're going to operate for the rest of the season. So that's probably the most interesting thing. I do think that Michael Hoy and Ogunjobi are going to be a big piece in influentially, but with less snaps.
Yeah, I agree. And I also, since it's going to plague me if I don't address it, I said Mike McDaniel playing for his coaching seat. That obviously makes no sense. He's coaching to try and win a game and keep his job. But when we talk about the players and we talk about rookies, before we get into the war game itself, the Dolphins' first-round pick, Kenneth Grant, is going to have a big role to play in the center of what I assume is going to be another 3-4 defense,
Right.
Following the departure of Calais Campbell, whereas our rookie cornerback, first-round pick Maxwell Hairston, like, I'm going to assume is probably starting by this point, but not necessarily. I think for the sake of this exercise, let's have him starting and just assume that he's a good player so we don't have to throw in variables like, how is Trey White's Achilles feeling? So let's put our defense on the field and get this war game kicked off.
Do it.
It's a decent kickoff. It's not a touchback, so it's not coming out to the 35, but the Dolphins are hyped up, trying to save their very friendly coach's job. They're starting from the 30, 0-0. I'm going to assume they're rolling out with something like they did last year, which is 3 consecutive 21 personnel packages, but I'm not sure. I shouldn't say too much. You're my guest. You tell me what you expect to see from the Dolphins and how the heck we get them off the field by beginning the game, forcing a 3-and-out.
For sure. So what I would predict, so quick, like a week 3, like let's say we went through week 3, so because we play them a second time, I believe that the Dolphins are going to try and push the run game a little bit more. I know that they were relatively efficient in the run game, like 4.8 yards per carry, but they didn't use it often. Their interior was bad. They drafted Jonas Avenea, that's probably going to fit at right guard. And I think they're going to use that because I believe that also the GM knows that he's on the hot seat as well. And their number one problem was they're drafting all these fast running backs and not using them. And their interior run game needs their outside run game. So I believe that they lean on the run game a little bit more, especially with knowing that Buffalo's not great in the run game, and they start dishing out more running styles on the inside and trying to break us that way. So in the first one, I expect 2 runs on a run on first down, a run on second down, kind of feel us out and try and get us in the box, and then use that timely passing. As with Bobby Babich and Sean McDermott collaborating with the defense, I would expect them to stay true in the initial drive into what they're good at, which they'll probably disguise cover 2 on a consistent basis, show press man up against Tyreek Hill and Jaylen Waddle, and then pull back, set in your zone, and then kind of feel it out while keeping Taron Johnson on the field and kind of obstructing Milano and Taron Johnson to play the run, and then Terrell Bernard can communicate for Taron Johnson to pull back or play the run sort of thing and get prepared based on pattern matching. So I believe that they'll start with an easy cover 2 system, feel it out sort of thing, and see where they can go. McDermott doesn't mind giving up points on the first drive, and that's fine sort of thing. So he'll analyze and react to the way they go. But I expect a disguised cover 2 looking like press man, and then Taron Johnson and Matt Milano really playing the run game.
So it does seem like we're going to have a little bit of trouble getting them off the field with a 3-and-out. So let's play out the rest of this drive just a little bit. Let's say you're right, they run up the gut with some level of success, maybe not necessarily to the tune of 4.8 yards per rush, but something close enough to get them into a 3rd and short. A place where last season we didn't like to be, but when Leslie Frazier was the defensive coordinator, even when McDermott had the job of calling the defensive plays, we were actually pretty darn good. In fact, on 3rd down throughout the Frazier regime, we were top 5 year in, year out. Third down defense, first drive, McDaniel coaching for his life. How, at least, would you want us to try and get off the field in what's already a pretty precarious position?
I would certainly do a 4-3 base. I would install Dorian Williams into that third and short, and I would play press man with Maxwell Hairston and Christian Benford on the other side. Play press man and expect a slant if it's passing, or then Dorian Williams able to stop the run on that 3rd and 2. So I would do like a cover one robber press man situation.
I absolutely love that. And it gets me kind of fired up too.
I know, right?
like people get fired up when you think about the offense scoring a lot of points, but I get fired up when I think about Matt Milano in coverage. Yeah. I get fired up when I think about a pass breakup on 3rd and 2. And look, that's the death by 1,000 cuts sort of offensive schematic rollout that gave us so many fits in the AFC Championship game. Right, that quick passing game, that's what Tua wants to do. But as you say, if you're expecting it on 3rd and 2, I think I agree with you that the Dolphins are probably passing, and it's the Dolphins, so whether it's 3rd and 2 or 3rd and 19, that ball is probably coming out quick. Do you think that we ought to have Hairston move wherever Tyreek Hill goes, or do we just play boundary and field and think that Benford could match up heads up on Tyreek Hill? And vice versa. Like, does Hairston have the physicality to match up with Waddle?
Yeah, my optimism says yes. Right now, I don't think Maxwell Hairston has the physicality to run exactly with Tyreek, but maybe somebody like Tyreek. But Tyreek is so experienced. His press releases, he can kind of work magic with those. So my optimism says yes. By week 10, I think Maxwell Hairston's going to start week 1. I think he's going to be set in tone by week 10. So it would be interesting. That's probably week 10 could be that answer where what we want to do against Kansas City Chiefs in the AFC Championship is run a zone, but run a single man coverage on one guy, a la Rashee Rice in the AFC Championship. So week 10 could be that breaking point of running a type of zone, but holding Maxwell Hairston to a man on Tyreek Hill sort of thing. So that's an interesting thing. I believe that that's what can happen, and that's what I want to happen. So I would love to see him just switching sides with Tyreek Hill and shutting him down.
Hey, look, and if all else fails, just put Michael Hoyt on him. If he can defend DK Metcalf one-on-one, he can defend Tyreek Hill.
I know. That's the big, Family Guy mystery box scene sort of thing. It's like, what does Michael Hoyt bring to this front seven? Because he can play linebacker at 280 and he can pass rush at 280 as well, So that's a big mystery box that I'm looking for, and I hope he does well, which I do think he will.
And talking about like nerdy football stuff that gets me really amped up, and I'm going to assume gets you amped up too, those sort of what was it called? An odd mirror, like the fronts that we were running, where Milano would be up between the defensive tackles at the line of scrimmage, and then just basically ostensibly playing somewhere between a creeper or a spinner or a spy, just sort of floating around the line of scrimmage, trying to keep things from happening in the short portion of the field. And that's Michael Hoyt's kind of bread and butter.
100%. But then the versatility is where you're talking about the disguised blitzes and disguised schemes that we can run. We almost went into this draft with after drafting the ability to actually play a 4-3 or a 3-4, because Deion Walker can be on the edge or nose tackle. Dwayne Carter can be on the nose tackle, can be on the edge. Michael Hoyt can do it all, sort of thing. The versatility that we hold, TJ Sanders, same thing. What we hold is we can throw the kitchen sink at somebody, or we can go to a specific setting. So that's where it comes in. And Matt Milano going on that 1-year deal, which I know you're a big fan of. I'm a big fan of. Homegrown. I love Matt Milano. He will probably play a lot of disguises and not stick to his immediate roots to gain another Buffalo contract that we went into 1 year. So his versatility, I think, will open up as well.
Look, we didn't draft a linebacker. We haven't signed a linebacker. There is either a ton of very secretive confidence in Eddie Ulofoshio, or there's a lot of confidence that Matt Milano isn't really a 31-year-old, because he's only played like a handful of snaps since he turned 30. So he could be more like a 29-year-old in a 31-year-old's body.
Right. And last season, at the end of the season, he kind of limped into it because he had a small injury, I believe, in week 18 sort of thing. So he only had 25 to 30% of snaps. So this year, rolling into a one-year deal, probably will be the closest to 100% at the age of 29 that he was since turning 30.
So we are in just a wonderful position. I'm getting very, very excited about this Week 10 matchup because we're in Miami. We could be seeing regime change happening mid-season for them if McDaniel can't win this intra-division battle against his nemesis, Sean McDermott. And we just forced a 3-and-out because they ran the ball twice. And now Hairston, there he is, sticking his hand in for a pass breakup. So they punt the ball back to us. Our Buffalo Bills take the field in, I'm going to say, a sparsely populated, what is it, Joe Robbie Stadium? What is the name of this field at this point? What, Pornhub
Is it still Hard Rock? He was like this close, wasn't it?
I think it was. Yeah, it was either Pornhub or like Coinbase or some cryptocurrency was going to come in and rename it. So it's Hard Rock. Those still exist, huh? It's not Planet Hollywood Stadium or no. Jekyll and Hyde Coliseum.
I haven't seen one since I was like 12. There might be one in like Toronto still or something. I'm not sure.
Josh takes the field, and boy, oh boy, it doesn't necessarily end the game, of course, but we know how jumpy Mike McDaniel gets when he's behind. And as you talk about Miami's efficiency running the ball and those metrics being very impressive, but for some reason, they don't really run the ball. If we force a 3-and-out, we take the field, ball at our own 30-yard line. Let's use our imaginations, and really let's have you use your imagination. How do we stick it to them? How do we put the boot on the throat early, march down the field for a touchdown? What do you want to see?
Yeah, I think it would be smart for McDermott and the offense with Joe Brady to kind of acknowledge what their deficiencies are, and then kind of acknowledge that we know them, sort of thing. And what it is the defensive backs, without a doubt. And it's manipulating the defensive backs in an easy way. The way I would operate is quick passes and even screens with Khalil Shakir and Josh Palmer almost on the same sides, and then taking the weak side out of it. Because if you're looking at your cornerbacks, Storm Duck and Jalen Ramsey, which would probably be gone, and then it's a rookie, Jason Marshall Jr. behind there. So if you're looking at a Florida rookie and then Storm Duck, who was a 7th-round pick, if I'm not mistaken, all you really have to do is take a one-on-one on that sideline. So you put them on the outside. You look at who's going to end up being one-on-one, who can beat them, and who's got a safety helping. Probably he's going to be Khalil Shakir. If he's on the left side, he'll have a helper, while Josh Palmer does not. Quick pass out. All you have to do is beat somebody one-on-one on that cornerback, who is a rookie in Jason Marshall. Beat him, you gain about 15 yards. That's showing that, hey, we know your cornerbacks aren't good. Not good enough to even tackle our wide receivers, right? That gets McDaniel start to turn and be like, oh, no, okay, we got to figure this out. Maybe play physical, play back more, and then you can adjust. So quick passes to start with James Cook's run game and duos, because their defensive line runs 3-4, but Kenneth Grant will be good in 2026, and he'll be good. He'll be good in Week 10, better in 2026. So the ability to run inside with Ray Davis and James Cook and running duos to set up a one-on-one with inside linebackers will benefit us with quick passes that will open up the DBs for bigger passes down in the third quarter.
I mean, it just sounds like this is a game that has potential for us to really steamroll them.
I think so. I don't think, just like the Giants last year, the Giants had a good front four, and I'm not going to take anything away from the Dolphins front four with Bradley Chubb, Chop Robinson, Jalen Phillips, all the Kenneth Grant, Benito Jones, all those guys are good. Don't get me wrong. Giants had a better front seven when it came down to it, but their DBs are last year are just as awful as the DBs in the Dolphins this year, and they had the 3rd overall pick. So you can't win with bad DB play, and if you can expend it like how Buffalo has the everybody eats mantra, and you can't just lock up one guy, you're going to have issues the whole entire game. So I agree with you.
So you like the idea of kind of a dink and dunk down the field, and then let Josh go 6 for 6.
And then eventually, I think that Keon Coleman works best in a power slot position, but in this type of game, he should be a prototypical X. And when it's ready, when Josh sees that one-on-one on that outside with Keon Coleman, then you just let it rip, because then they'll play too close to the box, get them on a one-on-one, and I would predict most of it is a dink and dunk. Like Josh Allen's average depth of target might be like 7 or 8 because he does so many 4-yarders, but then he does a couple 25-yarders, like 6 25-yarders, right? Mm-hmm. And then the efficiency of getting 5 catches out of that is where we just kind of, leave him in the dust.
I love it. And again, I'm just getting amped up.
Yeah.
I listen to, or at least try to listen to, reporters, content creators of other teams. And it's just such a unique position for us to be in. Not just as Bills fans vis-a-vis our historical Bills fandom, but vis-a-vis all the other 31 teams in the NFL, which is that we have the ability, we being the Bills, to run a great deal of multiple personnel out there, both offensively and defensively, whereas other teams are scrambling to figure out even who their just regular old starting 11 on either side of the ball are. And so when you approach this Dolphins defense, are you thinking about like 5 wide? You like this 3-by-1 sort of a thing? Is Dalton Kincaid factoring in here at all? And how do you envision, and I'll ask you to wear 2 hats, simultaneously the one you're currently wearing and being yourself, and also whatever hat Joe Brady might be wearing up in the box. Because Joe Brady, nonetheless, despite whatever advantages might exist on the boundaries, loves Alec Anderson. We drafted Jackson Hawes. We want to run the ball. Do you think that he is able to resist going with this big personnel? And would you like him to resist rolling out too much big personnel?
It would more or less be a reactionary, but I do believe that they will. I think the whole mantra. So they've always had that versatile guideline back since Brandon Beane came to Buffalo. How versatile can you be, and how can you kind of match up on a game-to-game basis? But last year is when he really started talking about really being able to do everything and then adjusting on a game-to-game basis. Instead of, like Ken Dorsey as an offensive coordinator, he would design plays to be like, this can beat cover one, zone man, this, and this, all in one play. And that didn't work for Josh Allen, right? Now what Brandon Beane wants to do is more or less analyze each game by game and being able to run what you want. And I believe that this Dolphins game comes down to actually more of an air raid against their DBs and knowing that their defensive backs are deficient. So we won't get rid, I'm not saying go 60-40. I believe whatever our pass run margin between, I think it's like a 58-42, something like that. I don't expect them to go to like 65-35 or anything, like make it an air raid like how we did have that unfortunate loss where Josh Allen threw 62 times. But I do believe that it could be simplified into just taking a more empty set and having 5 wide receivers out there and acknowledging that to show that threat, as well as still using our run game. So I would personally, against the Dolphins, just attack the DBs. I would like to see empty sets, knowing which is one-on-one is deficient, and just taking advantage of it. I mean, football can be as simple as that, right? I am bigger and stronger than you here, and that's what I'm going to do.
Mm-hmm. And considering how frequently Anthony Weaver likes to blitz, I'm really loving your game plan here, because if you're going to come after us with the blitz game, and we're constantly seeking quick outlets to what is now a receiver room chock full of quick outlet type receivers. You can even put Dalton Kincaid in that category with all the screen passes that he caught last year, but the forgotten man, Curtis Samuel, Palmer. We'll see about Elijah Moore. I mean, he did have 61 catches last year. He's fast as hell. He's a second-round pick. My sleeper, I don't even know if he'll make the 53-man roster, but my 2020 draft crush, Laviska Shenault, is on this team. Yeah. And when you talk about going 5 wide, my imagination goes to a 5 wide that includes either Ty Johnson, possibly even Ray Davis, and certainly James Cook. So we're presenting a lot of matchup issues for Miami here, and since it's November, we're not battling the heat, so we shouldn't be cramping up. So I do agree with you that the matchup is very much in our favor on this side of the ball. So let's fast forward a little bit in this game. It's fourth quarter. It's somehow just one of those goofy divisional games that you don't understand how it's still close. Like, we've outgained them by 150 yards. Tua's turned the ball over. He's managed to stay in the game. Let's assume he's healthy. I like Tua. I hope he stays healthy for the rest of his career, but there is that injury risk. Blah, blah, blah. Miami is going to be a weird scenario, and this is why it's all imaginary, but Miami sees that the game is tied, and now they've got the ball. Let's say there's about 6 minutes remaining. We got to get these sons of bitches off the field, and we got to get the ball back to Josh Allen, even though the scenario I'm about to throw you when we have the ball on offense is going to include Josh Allen trailing by 4 points. In this scenario, we're tied. Tua's got the ball, starting from his 40. How do we get these guys off the field? What does it look like to you in your imagination?
All right. So in my imagination, which showed some crumbles in last year that I didn't see much in 2018 to 2023, but I saw crumbles of all-out blitzes when we're trying to get off the field with that much time left in the fourth quarter with having Josh Allen on the other side. So it's kind of like we know we have Josh Allen. Let's throw everything at them and see if we can get a turnover, or we can just go a 3-and-out. So I believe in that situation, tie game, 6 minutes left. We know we'll get the ball back situation. I think they run a lot of all-out blitzes. Damar Hamlin played really well in the box and coming from the blitz when they gave it to him. So I would like to see some disguise blitzes coming out of the backfield. Christian Benford could come out. Matt Milano coming from the second level. I would like to see more of disguise blitz package and run one-on-ones on the outside to see if we can handle that, and then just try and get Tua so rattled that he throws that delayed ball when he takes that one step back in that diagonal and then leans back and tries to throw it high. That ends up 9 times out of 10 into an interception. How can we get Tua to that spot? Disguise blitzes.
I couldn't agree more. I think that what we sometimes see from the McDermott administration is a letting of the foot off the gas. And some might call it tightness. I'm not sure it's tightness, over conservatism, a lack of confidence, or just for some reason or other, or probably confluence of reasons and other reasons, a lack of determination to dictate, offensively or defensively, as the game starts to wind down. So blitzing Tua, dictating to him, while, of course, blitz puts you at a certain disadvantage on the back end, I think I agree, makes him make decisions that he's even less comfortable making than we're comfortable making.
Exactly. 100%. And we did it, we did it against Kyler Murray in Arizona in week 1, and it ended up well. We kicked that field goal, let them try to, go the full field sort of thing to score a touchdown, and we blitzed Kyler Murray like crazy, got him in a situation where he threw a long ball, ended up in an interception, and it was over sort of thing. So ideas like that is where I think McDermott's going to carry into 2025, and I think their whole entire scheme and development is going to start changing.
So you mentioned pressures that include members of the secondary coming down or Matt Milano coming on a blitz. Would you prefer see packages like that in this sort of scenario, this late game scenario, or are you desirous, like I am, of seeing NASCAR packages, ones that involve Javon Solomon replacing Greg Rousseau, for example?
So now that we're talking about week 10 versus week 3, right? Week 3, I would say no. Week 10, I would entertain it to see how he develops in it. If Javon Solomon is that type of NASCAR package where he can bring that pressure rate, because he was great in college, if he can bring that, then absolutely. If we do have 29-year-old Matt Milano at 100%, everybody, all Bills fans will never forget the Mike White hit. Can we?
Mike White certainly won't.
Yeah, exactly. Can Matt Milano still do that? And if he can do that, then Matt Milano on the field at all times, bring that rush that he can do, and he can hit hard, and that's what I would like to see. Javon Solomon could be a great story, but Matt Milano would be a better story in getting us another deal with Buffalo with the way he plays.
And certainly more predictable. I think you're right. Even by week 10, if my, was it 2023? No, 24. 24 draft crush, Javon Solomon, does
Yeah.
evolve into the sort of pass rusher that he has potential to. It's still a fun, nice to have, but I'm with you. Matt Milano, the all-pro, delivering a Matt Milano versus Mike White type of hit is really what you're looking for down the stretch in a game like this.
Yeah, I mean, it's all dependent. Javon Solomon, the way that we drafted as well, with Landon Jackson being more of a Greg Rousseau style and compression rusher, Javon Solomon can be that guy that when Joey Bosa leaves, that they could maybe lean on and be like, okay, well, we don't need to force another contract with Joey Bosa. Maybe Javon Solomon can kind of step into a role, not exactly like Bosa, but have that in that depth chart where we're not releasing him or looking past him already. So I would think, especially with the suspensions, that Javon Solomon is used to the best of his ability to try and see what his future entails.
So let's say it's 3rd and 8. Miami's got the ball. Same scenario, tie game. They're around the 50-yard line. 3rd and 8 is not quite short enough for Tua to get the ball out really, really, really quickly, like he wants to. So we got an extra half a step to get home. Would you ever have Ed and TJ on the field at the same time?
100%.
100%. Very confident.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think, I wasn't huge during the draft process because TJ Sanders had that second round grade, but I rewatched all TJ Sanders film, and I do love TJ Sanders, but he's in the perfect spot for Buffalo. I think he can excel. He can be himself in Buffalo, and that's where he will shine, sort of thing. On an NFL standpoint, I was a little weary. But I believe that depending on how Daquan Jones, what the weather is like, with him aging, and way Dwayne Carter can handle himself, I do believe that with TJ Sanders' firepower and the way he does handle nose tack, which is actually pretty decent in the collegiate level, them next to each other, especially with the youth in TJ Sanders, will probably give Ed Oliver a one-on-one because they'll probably divert attention to TJ Sanders. Or if it's the opposite, I'm wrong, then you're looking at a one-on-one with a center on TJ Sanders, and TJ Sanders does that well. He rips. He has a good rip against the center. He's got the same kind of center of gravity as the center, so he can push him over and kind of go through. So, yes, I think that TJ Sanders would fit well in a nose tackle position in Buffalo with the way we're handled, and they should at least try it in the first year to see what happens.
Yeah, I don't want to see them on the field at the same time on 1st and 10 early in a game.
Right.
But when the pressure is on, and that pressure is going to be felt more, both literally and figuratively, by the opposing quarterback. Yeah, I want those one-gapping defensive linemen on the interior getting upfield as quickly as possible. And yeah, TJ, certainly by week 10, should be up to speed enough with the professional game to outshine Daquan in such a role. And then I would assume, let's say, whether it's Bosa or maybe Landon Jackson is ready for this role, and Greg Rousseau compressing the pocket in what I like to think of, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this, in like an inversion of your traditional defensive line 4-man pass rush is, I think, very, very scary if you're an opponent. You know, your like Dallas's pass rush this year is a very traditional one. You're going to have Donovan Ezeraku on one side, bending the edge, and you're going to have Micah Parsons on the other side, bending the edge. We're inverting that. Greg Rousseau and Joey Bosa and Landon Jackson, whether this year or next year, are simply basically containing, while the sacks really ought to be accumulated by our guys on the interior, by Ed Oliver and TJ Sanders.
Yeah, more than likely that is their initial game plan. But I mean, I've been kind of thinking, I'm 5 miles away from the University of Arkansas campus, so I got to see Landon Jackson live. Everything a lot. Yeah, I'm a huge Landon Jackson fan. I'm so glad that he's a Buffalo Bill. I am interested. All he needs to do personally is learn two more pass rush moves, and I think he's got a full bag. He doesn't need to be a 4 or 5 pass rush guy. He does the cross chop too much. All he needs to work on is a speed to power bull rush and maybe an inside move, like an inside rep sort of thing, and that's it. And then he could be, that 10-plus sack guy. So I'm hugely optimistic on Landon Jackson. So your front four that you describe as Rousseau, TJ, Ed, and then
either Bosa or Landon.
Yeah. And Landon Jackson is like a 2026 outlook that's terrifying in my opinion. And that's what I love about it. So as much as I would like to say that the interior is that game plan of TJ Sanders, I think that having the 2 6'7" outside edges will just kind of bury a right tackle eventually by the third or fourth quarter, because they'll start to get tired of that situation. And then that's where the sacks come in late too.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So we've gotten them off the field. The Bills have the ball back mysteriously and magically, because this is all playing out in our imagination. The Bills are down 24-20. We got the ball on our own 35. Let's say Mike McDaniel's with sort of a blunder that is characteristic of Mike McDaniel's. They've punted it out of the end zone, giving us good field position. 2 minutes and 10 seconds to go. So we got the 2-minute warning on our side. All our timeouts available. Let's walk through this 2-minute drill together. How do we go down and score a touchdown?
All right. Well, Josh Allen typically will need, 40, like truthfully, not 13 seconds. Truthfully, probably like 45 to 50 seconds to run a field. So we're looking at probably about in excess of a minute 15. So that's what I love about Josh Allen, and actually just Josh Allen, to be honest with you. If it wasn't for Josh Allen, then the game plan would be completely different. So at this point, then everything is available. I believe that we would start running the ball to begin with, especially at 2:10, probably run the ball, put it down to the 2-minute warning, and then readjust from there. And then being able to use Ty Johnson and Ray Davis in the passing game. So I would expect easy, quick dishes to Ty Johnson. If he runs a wheel route, kind of set that up, and then maybe have Shakir on the other side. If it's man, you throw to Shakir. If it's zone, you throw to Ray Davis or Ty Johnson, sort of thing. And then kind of work those and just no huddle offense. Just keep it moving at 5 to 7 yards at a time. You start getting down to 1 minute. Then then Josh Allen kind of comes into the phase of, when is Keon Coleman open on the outside? And then you throw that quick go route. That's a 30-yarder when he's one-on-one. He catches that. Then you're into Dolphins territory, probably with a minute 15 seconds. So then at that point, then you get to slow down the game as well. Again, how many timeouts do we have, by the way?
We got them all.
We got them all. There you go.
No, McDermott has not thrown the challenge flag, so we have them all.
All right, perfect. So then we have 3 timeouts. So we run the ball again, use James Cook, run a duo, see if you can pick up that 10 to 11 yards and consistently go through there. So you run the ball a little bit, throw in Khalil Shakir, maybe an intermediate, and start kind of getting him to guess and see if you can open up that outside. I believe that Dalton Kincaid is a good aspect in this less than 50-yard touchdown availability. So maybe use Dalton Kincaid on the outside sideline that he's very good at. A quick out for 10 to 12 yards, kind of move along the chains with Dalton Kincaid. So we're the best thing about it is we're not changing most of our game plan, basically just keeping our same game plan, but in a no huddle offense.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's an interesting thing too, that with a 2-minute drill on the table, the likelihood that we even see James Cook on the field is slim, but I heard you roll him out there. How do you want to use our running backs? Who's in what position? Is there a tell? If James comes in during a 2-minute drill, does it almost tell the opposing coach, we're running because we're not going to try and keep James in for pass protection?
Probably, but we also built our offense for the run game, showing it that you can beat them. My favorite thing about football is being able to do something when the defense knows it and you still successfully do it. And our offensive line being top 3 in the league, personally, top 3 in the league, and having Jackson Hawes, Dalton Kincaid, and everybody along those lines. Sure, I mean, once in a while, run those duos. It's going to happen. Our offensive line is going to open up that gap for their inside linebackers, I believe Tyrel Dodson, who we know. It'll probably be a one-on-one with Tyrel Dodson. And I'm sorry, but James Cook's going to win. So at that point, that one-on-one with Tyrel Dodson is still going to work. And all we need is 10 yards, 11 yards. We don't need that touchdown efficiency. So showing the run is fine. And then maybe you can disguise it with James Cook trying to block if you want to, but that's getting a little too cute. But run it when you can. And then, maybe if you get down to a minute 15, a minute 10, you're only using Ray Davis and Ty Johnson.
I'll tell you, I wasn't sure how this War Games series would go. It's a new thing. I've
I
never
love
done
it.
it before. We're armchair quarterbacks playing defensive coordinator and offensive coordinator. But I'll tell you what, letting our imaginations run wild. I was going to ask you, but I think I got to jump in and just tell you. Can I tell you what I'm envisioning?
Envision.
Last play of the game, the 7,500 remaining Dolphins fans in the stands. They've all moved to the opposing end zone to
The shaded one.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, exactly. Because the SPF has worn off by this point, and we've got the ball on the 8-yard line. One last play. They don't know if it's a run, if it's a pass, where it's going to go. We've been just rattling their brains all day long, and we're going play action, naked bootleg, Josh, run it in past the pylon, and that's the end of Mike McDaniel's career. How cool would that be?
Incredible.
Maybe Antonio Brown has made it into the stadium, and he's on the sideline, and he reaches into a fur coat, and he pulls out a stuffed animal of a dolphin, and Josh Allen can just shake it as time expires.
If that were to happen, that we will need to revisit this and then figure out what is going to happen in 2030, 2032. Like, who should I invest with? Because that would be one of the best stories ever.
I'll do Johnny Carson with the turban on his head. Let me ask you. So that was me and my imagination. I want you and your imagination. There's 4 ticks on the clock, so we only got 1 play left. We could even say there's 1 second to go. So it doesn't matter what down it is. But we got the ball at the 8-yard line. We're down by 4. Walk me through the optimist's perspective of what's happening on this play to win the game.
Okay, 100%. I would run a 3-by-1. I would run it on the right side. Well, I guess I would run it on whichever side maybe Jason Marshall's on or their weaker cornerback room is, but they'll probably pull man, maybe play some zone in the front. I would run a 3-by-1, and with that 3-by set, I would run a outside corner with Keon, and then I would run a skinny post with Joshua Palmer or Dalton Kincaid, and then I would run maybe a hitch with Dawson Knox and run that 12 personnel, and then have Joshua Palmer on the other side to see if there's a matchup on that side. So that what you would probably be looking for quickly is the Dalton Kincaid quick skinny post to see if that opens up. If the safety moves over, then you have that middle open. Your second option would be Dalton Kincaid or Dawson Knox on a quick hitch. So run that 10-yard, be in the middle of the end zone, come back to the corner pylon like Josh Allen likes to do. I believe he had that exact play with Dawson Knox last year for his 1 or 2 touchdowns. Threw it right to that corner pylon. He caught that, and it was an incredible play. Run something like that for Dawson Knox, and then that corner of Kincaid's open, and look for that. If not, then Josh Allen can take it and run it.
And there we go. We're 9-0.
9-0. That's what I mean. I figured we didn't establish what record we had at week 10, but I knew that we were undefeated.
We didn't need to establish anything. I'm doing, maybe I'll even sort of merge these 2 series together, but I'm doing a series on why it's not ridiculous to think that the Bills could go 17-0. You look at our schedule, and yeah, sure, we got the Eagles as the second to last game of the year. We got to start out our season against the Ravens. We got to play the Chiefs in the middle of the schedule. Like, obviously, the likelihood of going 17-0 is slim. But there are a couple teams in this league who you could make the argument could win every single game on their schedule, and I'd say we're among those teams. Who are some of the other teams that you might put on that list?
Ooh, that's a good question, because I haven't gone through the full kind of schedule format, because you are right, our Bills are favorable. I mean, even looking at our AFC East opponents, like the Jets have a much harder home schedule, while away schedule, while most of our difficult teams are at home, sort of thing. So that's insanely favorable for us. I'm not sure what happened or how it happened, but I love it. But anyways, besides that, I would probably, if I had to look into that demographic, I would have to. The Lions have a very tough schedule where they have to play outdoors a lot. So I think they could be in that department because the Lions are so good. But it's a question about their offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator are gone. How do they adjust? So I can't see them going undefeated. Tampa Bay Bucks did a really good job on offense, but I can't see them going undefeated. Kansas City Chiefs are still going to have to adjust to their offensive line to get that back in order. Is Josh Simmons ready? Week 1 sort of thing with his ACL. Getting that congealed atmosphere will probably be something that's a little bit more difficult, I would say probably a surprise team that could probably go toe-to-toe with us is probably the LA Rams. I would say that the LA Rams draft so well. They're the other team that were going into a rebuild, and then they figured it out in a draft and an offseason, and they did that well. So there's no reason to think that they'll descend from last year. And they had so many injuries last year that it still played well, to the fact that a healthy Rams roster is probably our best suited 1 and 2 to win as many games as possible.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And a Matthew Stafford swan song with a really talented roster and just a dynamite defensive line. I mean, those guys are killers this year. Verse and the defensive tackle, Fisk with the short arms, but that was one of those draft day overthinkings.
Yes.
Wasn't it? He was absolutely blazing in the 40. He was obviously a very, very good player. And they're like, his arms are 30 and a third and not 31.
Yeah. And sometimes football can be simple, because he was a prospect when I was watching him. Is he a dog? Check yes or no. And I checked yes. And then I wanted him on Buffalo. And I knew that he was going to be a top 40 pick. But, then we were, unfortunately went with Dwayne Carter and fixed the situation with TJ Sanders. But yeah, their young defensive approach is exactly kind of what we did this year. And as long as we give our new defensive line players snaps to learn, then they can take off running just like LA did.
I think we have to put Philadelphia in the conversation just because they're the reigning champs. Their division, I don't know, maybe the Cowboys got a little better.
Yeah,
I don't know where highest paid quarterback in the league with the hamstring. Is he playing? Is he fully back to health? Do you even know?
Dak,
there we go.
Yeah. He's 100% good to go. So he'll be 100% good to go, which is good. Commander's good. And for some reason, I've written one article, about to write a second one. For some reason that I'm defending the New York Giants, and I'm not sure why. I probably need like a therapy session for somebody to tell me why.
I know exactly why.
It's not Dable and Shane.
That was going to be my prognosis is it is Dable. You just don't want to admit it. Something lurks deep in your unconscious that doesn't want you to admit that it's Dable.
Okay, so I will. This is what's popped in my head, and I haven't written it down or talked about it, to be honest with you. Is my favorite part of the NFL, other than obviously playing football, is the front office. I think GMs have a difficult job. It's analyzing. It's up to you to make sure that everybody else is in place to win a Super Bowl. Like, you are the starter of it. You make those decisions to make sure the roster is set, sort of thing. So the front office is one of my favorites. I thought that they should have fired Dable and Shane after last year, no matter what. It was what it was, reset sort of thing. I do think it comes down to John Mara, because that video of John Mara talking to Joe Shane and being like, hey, I would hate to see Saquon Barkley leave, and it still happened to him. And John Mara, I don't know much about his personal life, but I empathize with him not being able to figure it out since Eli Manning. Like, he's tried and tribulated throughout his process to try and get it back to where they were with Eli Manning, and he still hasn't done it. And I kind of feel bad. And that scene was more or less like, man, you were right. Everybody else was wrong. And I hope that you kind of get retribution for it.
And you think that this season could have a dose of retribution?
For sure. As I said previously, the Giants' front seven was dynamite. They grabbed pressures, but if they didn't get a pressure, the DBs left it open, and it was what it was. That's why they were bad on defense. They went and got Paulson Adebo and Javon Holland. Javon Holland's one of my favorite defensive backs. Great defensive backs. Add Tyler Nubin in his second year from Minnesota, and then they have another corner that is dynamite as well. So their defense is going to be great. They drafted Abdul Carter.
Some guy named Abdul Carter.
Darius Alexander.
That was a tough pill to swallow, I tell you, man. So here's my thing, though. It wasn't that tough of a pill to swallow, because when I'm not rooting for the Bills, I'm actually rooting for the Giants. I'm a New Yorker. I'm not an I've got no reason to hate the Giants. Same. January 27th, 1991 was a long time ago, and that was the day I became a Bills fan, so I can't be too upset at Bill Parcells.
Yeah.
But that defensive line.
Yes.
And when you talk about the types of rookies who can come in and reliably make a difference year one, I think Darius Alexander is right up there with the short list of them.
And he's going to be next to Dexter Lawrence. And Dexter Lawrence is going to take over everything. Like, he's almost just as good as the Cleveland Browns Myles Garrett, and he brings enough pressures in that game to where it's going to open up Darius Alexander, and then Abdul Carter sitting there as well with Kayvon Thibodeau. Like, it's insane. So the offense is maybe based on what they do with Jackson Dart, how well Russell Wilson plays. But Russell Wilson is basically Malik Neighbors' dream when it comes to a moon ball.
Throw it deep.
He's going to do better. Malik Neighbors will be better than George Pickens at that game, sort of thing, with Russell Wilson. So that's going to be an element. I love Cam Scatterbo. I love Tyrone Tracy. Like, they have the tools, but the NFC East is so hard that their record won't reflect it. But you will see that ascension if you do watch their games.
So you've joined us here on the One Giant Pod. All the reasons that your New York Giants will indeed be going 7-10 this year.
Yeah.
No, but I also think it's good for football to have a good Giants team. Somebody else to keep the Dallas Cowboys in check vis-a-vis the spotlight. Even not necessarily winning on the field, but where nobody likes this bright light being shined on Dallas. And so if the New York Giants can absorb some of that toxic radiation, I'm more than happy for them to do so. And look, I was talking to a Giants fan the other day who really does not want to see Jackson Dart take the field for a second, and I vehemently disagree. I like the way the ball comes out of his hand. I have always liked Russell Wilson, the person, more than I've liked Russell Wilson, the quarterback. We know what Daboll can do with a very raw rookie Josh Allen. Jackson Dart has a lot of starts under his belt. I think he's much more ready to go, and I think Brian Daboll is ready to have his next Josh Allen.
Yeah, just like how I believe TJ Sanders got in his best landing spot in Buffalo, I think Jackson Dart got his best landing spot with Brian Daboll, without a doubt. And I do kind of like, hypocritically talk, because if I had to do the top three people who I believe led to Josh Allen's success, number one, it's Josh Allen. Number two, it's Brandon Beane. Number three, it's Brian Daboll. National media kind of flips that and always talks about Brian Daboll in that aspect. But to see Brian Daboll so jacked up in rookie mini camps, just Jackson Dart throwing without pads on or anything along the lines, that connection that you'll have, the 1-2, is also why Brian Daboll and Josh Allen worked. Anytime Josh Allen talked about Brian Daboll, he was like, Brian Daboll will bet you $100 on a coin flip because he's just competitive. And that's what Brian Daboll and Jackson Dart look like, right? Like, let's push each other to become successful. And mentality is so important in the NFL, where I do believe that's going to work.
I think this leads me to what I hope and expect will actually be a really, really good conclusion to this episode. The reason that I put together these series of shows that I'm calling War Games is because, particularly in the off season, you wind up with a lot of content that's like, well, I think player X will be good, I think team Y will be good, and it's all just too general. So I thought that if we just said, what do you want to do on the first play of the game? What do you want to do on the last play of the game? Let's get good and specific. It could be more fun. But I will integrate the specificity with which we've been talking about the Bills in this game that we've now won against the Miami Dolphins in Week 10 with a more general question about the 2025-26 outlook for our Bills. It's been a few years since Daboll was calling plays, but if we turn on our flux capacitor and go back to the Daboll years, it felt like we should score on every possession. And if we had the ball last, it felt like we'd win any game that we played. Didn't feel like that last year. We had the MVP and these historically good metrics, but it didn't feel, for instance, in that Kansas City game, like we got this. Yeah. We're going to march down the field on them. Didn't feel like that during any close game. And it hasn't felt that way since Daboll left. Where are you at with regards to potentially returning to Daboll era level confidence in our offense?
Yeah, it would have to definitely be like an ascension of confidence. Like, there's no way that we'll go into like the first three games and be like, oh, boom, yeah, bring us to the playoffs sort of thing, because we're good. I do believe that with the evolution of the NFL play is a little hard to kind of dictate that. Back in Daboll's, it wasn't an insane amount of too high safety until they moved to too high safety.
That was our fault.
Yeah, I know. Exactly. So that confidence in what we had in Daboll's system and when we had it at that time was because that air raid was available with Stephon Diggs, and it was just nonstop, right? So that was like such an exciting time for NFL because it was just video game levels of passing, right? So it's hard to kind of dictate I guess when I know I have confidence, like I had in the Daboll days, it'll show in the correct balance of using this year in James Cook in the end, because we all are kind of annoyed about James Cook not seeing the field at all on the final drives in Kansas City, sort of thing. So how do we versatilely use our offense to make it more confusing for the defense instead of kind of showing your hand and just doing exactly what we do? Last year, I lost confidence in like the Houston Texans game when we were just throwing vertical balls to the sidelines 3 times in a row, sort of thing. Like that's where I was like, okay, we're sort of in trouble in these 2 minutes, right? Like, why aren't we being more creative? Creativity is where I'll gain that confidence.
I'm lockstep with you. When we talk about other teams like the Giants, we've talked about the Dolphins, we've mused a bit about Kansas City, Dallas, the Commanders we touched on for a very hot second. We have a lot of weapons on this team. Our wide receiver 4 or 5, however you want to categorize Elijah Moore, caught 61 passes last year. 61. That's kind of wide receiver 1 or 2 level for 90% of the NFL teams. Yeah. And he's bottom of the wide receiver depth chart. And so much of the conversation about the Buffalo Bills wide receiving core is isolated to that, the wide receiving core, and does not account for pass catchers like Dalton Kincaid, pass catchers like Dawson Knox, pass catchers like the 3 really good pass catching running backs. How many is that? That's 5 wide receivers, 2 tight ends, and 3 running backs. That's a lot of people to whom to throw the ball. Talk about an air raid.
Yeah, I mean, we had 13 different players that caught a touchdown last year, sort of thing. So we're not afraid to kind of dish it out. But it is, I mean, now it is a little bit more efficient. You know, Elijah Moore, we don't have Matt Collins, sort of thing. So it's a question of now we're using the speed and separation instead of maybe that vertical threat that you had in Matt Collins and things like that. So it's interesting. And I believe this is an accurate fact, but don't hold me to it. But if I'm not mistaken, in the last 3 years, Elijah Moore was top 3 in uncatchable targets as well. So mind you, 62 catches with probably, 20 to 30% of uncatchable targets. That could have been 75 to 78 catches, sort of thing. So Elijah Moore and Joshua Palmer are people who are going to step in to a not exact Cole Beasley, John Brown-esque roles that he had back in 2019 and 2020, in addition to Khalil Shakir, Dalton Kincaid, and everybody else like that. So we're just like, we're like being a hybrid Pokemon into like stage 4, right? We had all these powers in stage 1. Now we added powers, and now we're this level 4 Pokemon that should be able to attack at all angles.
Blastoise is what you're looking at.
Blastoise, thank you. I still, Game Boy was the last time I touched a Pokemon, to be honest with you.
You didn't go wandering around Central Park trying to find Pokemon?
I did do that a couple times. I won't lie. That's true. Yeah, I apologize. But
if you want me to edit that out, by the way, I can.
No, I'll admit it. But I did it for like maybe 2 weeks, and then realized that you have to like walk a lot to hatch eggs, and I was like, yeah, I'm out. I don't go on walks.
Okay, Randall, this has been a joy and a pleasure. Buffalo Bills are 9-0 after Week 10. Before I let you go, tell my listener where we can find you. Not only on Twitter, but you mentioned you're writing some articles.
Yeah, you can find me obviously on Twitter, Blue Sky at Randall Slifer. I try and interact with everybody on that platform for sure. I do my podcast, most of my podcasting with draft professors, with Jim Wickens, crew of 55 people that do such a great job at scouting and podcasting every day. We've already done summer scouting, getting through my board. I've got 200 people on my defensive board already. That's super interesting. Although I'm watching defensive tackles, but we don't need one. And then I also write for Team NBS Media that you can check out my articles. I do Razorbacks and Buffalo Bills. I just put an article out with the schedule release videos. I ranked them from 32 to 1. It was an exhausting night, to be honest with you. and then I'm also with their Draft Central team with Bill Carroll and Greg Rector and Jeff Barnes, who is really incredible. And they are a full of knowledge podcast that they do Wednesdays that will be coming up into next year. And that's where you can find me.
You're a busy man, Randall Slifer. I appreciate you coming on the Bills pod with me. Talk to you again soon. Go Bills.
Go Bills.